Hi, Tracy.
Hey there.
No.
Do that background today.
Hello, good evening.
Andrea.
Hi, Tracy.
Seems I'm muted, sorry.
Hello, everyone.
Now we're here. Yeah.
Hey y'all,
Hey, Lori. What a pleasure.
Hi, Lori.
how you guys doing?
I'm doing good.
Good.
Hey Carmen, welcome to the party.
Hey Lori, how are you?
I'm good.
Hello, welcome.
Looks like
So-
we're going to J-Frog today. Art Factory, maybe. Let's see.
Hi. So my name is Kermit. I'm from JFrog. Just joined today to hear a bit about this project. And since I've read the spec, I had some questions about the events that were important for us that I was wondering if could be added.
Here, welcome.
Sure, welcome. Yeah, welcome everyone. So let me share a link to the notes so that everyone has it. Yeah, so I put a few things on the agenda, but feel free to add new items and yeah, let's. As I said, Kermit, we have some questions, so let's make space for those for sure. So feel free to add yourself to the participant list as well. And yeah, for the agenda for today, first item, I mean, new attendees, but introduce yourself already. So welcome again, Kermit. Just wanted to review quickly action items, a couple of updates first, and then we can maybe switch to the discussion about events for our Artifactory. So the only action item I had formed last time was about setting up a meeting for the Spinnaker folks for CDEvents demo. I don't know, Jalander, do you know if anything happened on that front?
So the review is happening, like the Spinnaker POs are getting reviewed, but demo is not scheduled yet. So I will ask Ben to set up one again. So probably he's finding the right people to have set up the meeting. So I'll check with Ben. It's not here, I think.
No, he mentioned he was able to join us today, fortunately. Okay. Quickly, SDK updates. So in terms of the Golang SDK, made a new patch release to fix a couple of issues that I encountered while working on the Harbor integration. For the Java SDK, sorry, Jalander, to put you on the spot again. I just wanted to ask if you had any updates on the release 0.1.2.
I think the identified issues for 0.1.2, I think those are fixed. I think if we can release the 0.1.2, it'll be good. I think with the latest changes.
Okay, so it's not done yet, but it's ready to be done.
Yeah.
And I've seen a few PRs. I think you're working on generating the SDK.
Yeah, right. So like a couple of events I've created. So it will be same for all of the events. Like once this PR is reviewed, so we are good to have this generating SDK for all other events. And I'll update with this different releases then on.
Thanks, Jalander. Okay. Then I just wanted to provide some quick updates on the tools adoption threads that we have. So in terms of Harbor, the proposal is out there and is being reviewed. It has an approval already. And I went ahead and made an implementation for that. And I plan to do a demo to the Harbor working group tomorrow to show how that works. And in terms of Tecton, I got the enhancement proposal up, so it's also being reviewed. The idea is to move the current experimental implementation to the official Tecton branch. And in terms of Argo CD, I had a quick thing with Michael, who made the proposal and is currently working on an Argo CD release, but hopefully next week we will resume work on that and work on a POC. So I think from Spinnaker, we already got an update. And I wanted to ask if anyone had any news on the test cube implementation, because I remember Ole mentioned that the implementation was done some time ago and it was waiting for a release, but I haven't heard any news whether the release was made and if that is available yet in a test cube release. If not, I will reach out to Ole and ask him. Okay, and I see new item security events. Ortelius, is that you, Tracy? You added this?
Yes, I just added that. So we've been working with the Guac people that are part of Salsa. And we pitched, and that's a company called Kasari Software. It's a handful of guys from Citibank. We are going to reconnect in September, and they're going to chat internally if they would like to work with the Ortelius team to start building out the use cases and events for security. It's going to be pretty broad because there's a lot of new security tools that we need to include. But just to note that is potentially in the works, and I'm going to continue working on getting a team together to start building security events.
Yeah, thanks, Tracy. Yeah, I mean, it would be great to get people contributing to that.
And on that note, I'll continue working with the tool belt, the OpenSSF tool belt on that topic.
Yeah, cool. I think there is a meeting later today, right?
Yes, there is.
So yeah, I also joined last week, and
Great.
I'll try to continue joining as much as possible. Cool. Thanks for that. Yeah, I would say before we get into discussions about the spec, maybe it's a good time for to stop, as I think this is all the updates, unless there is anything else.
We did, just a note, we did do our CDF online meetup last week.
Yeah.
The test cube folks presented, and they did several slides on CDEvents and their work there. And that is uploaded to the CDF YouTube channel. And there is a CDF online meetup playlist that you can find it in. And Roxanne's been pushing it out through all their social media channels.
Thanks, Tracy. That's great. If anyone has the link, feel free to add it. Otherwise, I'll bring it up later.
And I will find that YouTube channel and put it in the document.
Thanks, Tracy.
Is now a good time for Carmen to jump in?
I would say yes.
Awesome.
I was about to.
Okay, thank you. So I reviewed the spec and looked at the different events that were defined. I hope there is not too much noise coming from here. There's this few discussions going on around here. So, and most of this, the events defined seem to me to be coming from a CI or a CD tool. And I wondered if we could add events that happen later on in the process in the change management. For example, if you've uploaded a few artifacts and now you want to bundle them inside a release bundle and then promote that release bundle to, let's say, an environment called dev, and maybe then to an environment called staging, and then maybe we want to distribute them to an edge node. Can these be events that are defined in the spec? I mean, not the actual environment name, but just the event of promotion of a release candidate.
Yeah, to me, for promoting an Artifactory, yeah, makes total sense to me. I think stating that we have reached a certain level of confidence or maturity on the artifact, I would assume, so it's ready for releasing or something like that. Yeah.
So I would suggest that there will be an event of bundling, of collecting a few artifacts and defining these as a release candidate. For us, we just, the name we use internally is release bundle, but it's a release candidate, can be called a release candidate also. And then promoting it, the event of promotion, and the distribution. And then I guess for some customers, for some people, there will also be a deployment. For some, it's just a distribution and a release maybe. Because I'm guessing not everyone is deploying stuff. Maybe you just release and somebody else picks up what you've produced and uses them inside something else. So the deployment is not a must here.
Yes, I think a few of these we discussed in the past, but we have not implemented yet. So I think we discussed about bundling of artifacts. So today, even we have deployment type of events. We don't have release type of events. And in those deployment events, we only refer to a single artifact. But we knew that this was kind of artificial limitation. We always plan to introduce the concept of bundling at some point. So that's definitely something that we discussed, and I think it would be interesting to have. We didn't specifically discuss about bundling events, but that makes sense to me as a possibility for sure. Promotion, don't think we discussed before. but I agree with Emil that this is something that we definitely could consider. And as you mentioned, Carmen, not everything is about deployment, it's also about releases. And so I guess, yeah, making these promotions and finally releasing artifacts is something that we could consider. Yeah, so I think all this sounds interesting. I guess as a first step, we should probably track this into some GitHub issue, so that we can then continue that detailed discussion on those as well. Oh, sorry, I see that someone is there and raised.
I didn't want to interrupt. So this is Dan from Bloomberg. Along with that,
Hi, Dan.
I had kind of a similar vein of thought of maybe tagging artifacts with some sort of metadata. And maybe thinking back to the previous item of tagging an artifact with a security vulnerability. For our use case, we wanted to tag artifacts as having regressions or bugs. And so I was wondering if it sounds like not exactly the same as what Carmen was mentioning, but having some way to add tags to artifacts is something that we've already been thinking about and sort of toying with on our side. And I'm wondering if that is similar or just completely different, or we're using the same words, but is that actually, could it be part of this kind of update?
So for us, when we do a bundling of artifacts, some of the artifacts you bundle inside the release candidate might be documentation. And it might be artifacts that are just for metadata on them. I mean, for Artifactory, we have properties, of course, so you could just put in the properties, they will be bundled. But you could also add artifacts that are metadata describing like documentation or release notes or anything. Does that help?
Yeah, I mean, we have a thought line. Sorry, I will lower my hand. I think we have a thought line on a particular type of metadata tagging, but if it was general, like we could work with it, or if it helps to be more specific, we can maybe just outline our use case in a GitHub issue, and then we can talk about whether it should be more general or more specific.
So one question from me, I mean, about this type of events and artifacts, are these all envisioned as events that would be generated by artifact registry, or
Yeah, I think
by different part?
I think this should be created by the Artifactory or any other artifact repository, binary repository. For us, I mean, it will probably just be a webhook, some kind of plugin that we can add to these events, because these events are important within the scope of a binary repository. So
Yeah, I think in our use case, it would be, there could be something that's creating the artifacts, and then something else that is doing some sort of verification or validation. And then from there, wanting to tag an artifact with certain properties. So it would be slightly different.
So actually, I would assume that the event will not include any tagging or properties, but just say this is the event. These are the included artifacts, or this is how you get the included artifacts. And then a user, I mean, a consumer can use the appropriate APIs. I'm guessing each registry, each repository will have its own APIs for retrieving any tags or properties. or anything on these artifacts or on the release bundle as a whole. So what I'm saying basically is, I think as a minimum, these events need to say what are the artifacts that were bundled, or what is the bundle that was promoted and where to, and what was the bundle that was distributed and where to. And then you could just query the system, any system, for the rest of the information.
Right. I'm not sure if Dan, you were referring to tagging of artifact as data in the events, or is it events about a tag that was done? So about metadata added to an artifact?
Yeah, I think it would be a separate event. So the artifact is created and perhaps distributed, and then at some later point, it would be that later on someone has a security check that determines that the artifact contains a bug or contains a vulnerability. And so I don't want to conflate the ideas. If it's a separate thing, it's okay, but in our world, we were thinking of the same sort of word, artifact being tagged as with some property. And that can be a different subject if it makes more sense.
Or maybe if this is specifically security events that you're referring to, the event should be a vulnerability located. And then if it's generated from a security tool, you have the repository subscribing to that event, no? Could that help?
I mean, for sure, we can maybe describe a bunch of different types of events. And if it's easiest to be very general, like just tagging a artifact with some kind of vulnerability, that's fine. If we can sort of determine a few well-defined use cases that cover a lot of our things, that can be more specific, I'm open to either.
Yeah, I know I've been working a bit with the Harbor Registry. I know that they have a concept of labels there, for instance. So I think for them as well, that it might be possible to have events about labels being added or removed from artifacts. But I guess the use case for those labels is mainly also, again, security oriented, the way that is used to tag an artifact as being scanned or things like that. So, okay. I think that's a lot of input, a lot to process, but it sounds very interesting to me. So I think today the only event we have today that is really targeted to registries is the artifact pushed event. And I think it would be definitely good to have some more of these events for things like releases. I think we might want to have like a generic event. I'm not sure we should have. We could have. I mean, we will need to discuss, but we could have like one specific to the artifact repository and also a generic release event, or it could be the same. Yeah.
I'm thinking a bit about this bundling, what that really is in general terms. I realize that that's what it's called in Artifactory today. So
it's setting a candidate release, I think. I think the common terminology will say that you bundle to create a release candidate. Usually.
So is it expected to be more than one artifact in such a bundle, or is it? I mean, maybe we have a confusion on what artifacts. What is an artifact then?
So if an artifact is a Docker or a jar file or an npm, or I mean, a bundle will include all of these and the Helm chart that's used for, I mean, it's usually what we see with the customers, especially big customers, is that a bundle will contain potentially tens of artifacts, of packages that are artifacts, or maximum, I mean, the maximum I've seen that I think is legit is a few hundreds. But we also have people with like thousands. I just, if I could suggest one more thing, it's for me, when I looked at the spec, I was missing something that as a consumer is very interesting for me. If I'm looking at myself, not as a producer, but as a consumer, getting transitions of tickets, like Jira tickets. This something that I think I would love to subscribe to as an event. For example, it would be if a customer has a Jira that was turned into a release bundle, or maybe an artifact even before the release bundling, and there is some finance person that clicks on this is approved from finance, and I know I can promote it, for example. So that's something that I think is an interesting event.
So, yeah, issue tracking events is also something that has come up before. Brad brought it up in the previous meeting, and I think there's also a collaboration that we started with Value Stream Management Interoperability Group. And they're interested in a scope slightly broader than what we do in CDEvents today. So from their point of view, they're interested in a feature definition that goes through epics, features, and then implementation, that is the specific PRs, and then all the way to something being in production and producing value, and so closing the cycle back to defining new features. So they're interested as well in having a way of modeling things like issues as part of CDEvents or some extension of CDEvents. And I think this is definitely an area that it seems to be interesting for us as a project to be addressing. Yeah. So I think we discussed it until now more in the context of links to SCM type of system. So being able to associate changes in the code to issues. I think if I understood what you were suggesting, Carmen, correctly, you were saying that it would be interesting to be able to associate other type of entities, like a promotion or a bundling or a distribution to specific issues. Is that correct? Okay, that's interesting. Okay.
And some adapter can do the association, just to be able to get the event. Would be, I think, beneficial.
Mm.
I mean, it's not an easy task to find the artifact that is linked to a Jira ID, but I do believe it's possible through SBOMs, building flows, and Git commits and stuff.
Yes. So definitely one of the things that we would like to be able to do is to be able to kind of build a type of audit trail for artifacts. So to try to connect all the events with each other so that you start with a certain maybe issue ID, but then you have PRs in your system, you have certain tests, security checks, builds that are executed. All these will produce events. You have artifacts generated and stored in an artifact registry. And so if you had the ability of connecting all these events, you would be able to navigate this chain of events. And so associate your artifact ID with a specific JIRA's IDs associated to those. So there is one bit of work that we are discussing that is the main chunk of work that we are planning for the next 3 days, which is the ability to connect events with each other. So that's something that we are working with Ben from Apple and Emil. So Ben unfortunately could not be here today to present his work, but yeah, so just the next item on the agenda is about connecting events, and he prepared a PR for us to review. So that's also something, if you're interested in this, and everyone in this group, if they're interested, I think the more input we get on this topic, it would be great. Okay, yeah, I tried to capture the discussion here in the notes, but I think it would be great then to go and track this into GitHub. Is that something you would be interested in doing? Maybe define some use cases or some of these ideas in GitHub issues, Karmit? Or I can also start and creating some item based on the discussions that we had today. But I think it would be great then to have some further feedback and continuing the discussion there. If that makes sense.
I can, if you could send me something initial, I can work with you on refining it. So I won't get lost inside the GitHub. So it's added to the correct places. So if you'll send me something, I can help and add data to it.
Okay. Sure. And similarly done, if you would like to document the use cases about the tagging of our artifacts that you were discussing earlier, I think that would be really useful. Or again, I can create an initial placeholder item if you want.
Sorry, I was muted. Yeah, I think I can send a ticket or create one to get the ball rolling.
Great, thanks. Yeah, any more questions or discussion that we want to have today on these? Okay, but thanks a lot. I think this is really helpful for us to the more use cases we have. I think it's really useful for the project to move in the good direction. So I'll start creating some of these issues. We also had one general, let me find it, one general issue about artifact event for artifact repositories. So I will create some new issues and link them to here so we can track them under one single entity. So I do have one question about registries. If you don't mind, Kermit, since I have you here. So I was looking at the what Harbor does in terms of events. As I've been implementing a POC for those, and they have these events. So they have events for push, pull, and delete artifact. Scanning completed, scanning stopped, scanning failed. So events about quotas, replication, and tag retention. I was trying to figure out which of these events would make sense in general to bring into CDEvents as a specification. And I think it would be good to consider events that are relevant for most registries. So in my mind, what I was thinking, probably the push, pull, and delete artifacts are probably general ones, but I was not sure about scanning type of events of things like quota, replication, and tag retention. So,
I think quota is very specific to the tool that you're just showing. The deploy, the push is significant. Obviously, we also handle when we handle webhook events, so we also allow move or copy. Of course, there is distribution, which I think is called replication, maybe. I mean, it's not the same actually. Replication is not the same like distribution, but it's might be. I'm not sure. Replication is general. Is interesting enough. Tag rotation. What is tag rotation?
tag retention,
like to mark it as kept.
Yeah, I think they allow for retention rules to be set. And so this is about the retention rule being processed, I think.
So I mean, it's a major event on a legacy in a repository, but if my focus is on change management and SDLC, I think this one is less interesting. That's why also the replication I think is less interesting. Scanning is very interesting, but it's not really a registry event. It's a security product event. I mean, if you would fire such a scanning event, it would be from our X-ray product, not from the artifact.
Okay.
I mean, it should be done. The event should be fired from the product that just did it. I mean, that processed it, right?
Yeah.
I agree there as well. I think scanning is something that is more relevant or more related to like a test activity that is performed on some artifact. So scanning is just one of those test activities, or yeah, the like. So it's more like the tagging of events that I think Dan was into. as a post operation after it has been pushed to the registry. And it could be done outside the registry tool itself, obviously, as well. So it doesn't need to have a strong connection to the registry itself, I think.
Yeah, I mean, you wouldn't even know if an artifact was scanned if it's a third party that just downloads the artifact, scans it, and maybe deletes it. You wouldn't know that it was scanned. You just would know that it was deleted, for example.
Yeah, the registry, yeah.
Yeah. About the tagging, I understand the requests. We, again, like I said, we have properties. It's just that customers will push like tons of properties on an artifact. So if these need to be events, I'd be really careful about the volumes. But I guess every customer can configure this as he needs to. I mean, retention is not Harbor specific. Retention and archiving is, I mean, I don't know about retention, but archiving for sure, it's a generic event. Question is if it's interesting. What's the main goal? I mean, maybe I'm missing something. What's the main goal of these events? What is the process you're trying to solve? What is the question you're trying to answer?
There are two main goals or use cases that we consider. One is more interoperability between tools. So certain tool sending an event and another tool reacting to it and taking actions as a consequence of that. For instance, with registry, there is a use case from GitOps tools. They're interested in being notified about a new tag available for an artifact, because then they can react by sending a pull request to Git, updating the definition of the deployment and triggering a deployment as a consequence. So that's an example of like a direct interaction through events. And the other use case is really to have all tools in your toolchain producing these events. So you can store them in a central storage, and you can use then this data to do things like building an audit trail, so connecting all these events together. And it allows you to build audit trails, to visualize your workflows, to produce metrics. So if you want to see how long it takes for a certain amount of code to be packaged into an artifact or released and so forth. And so these are the two main use cases that we target.
So, okay, so if you're talking audit trail, so I take it back, archiving seems to be important for you. Because I'm more focused on SDLC. SDLC, once there was a deployment, what I carried next is not archiving of the artifact, but the rollback, or the next release. But if you're talking about if you're talking about audit trail of an artifact, yeah, that's important. And I think from your explanation, I understand the tags a bit better. They might be something that you use if you don't have the promotion that Artifactory provides, because you would use these tags to indicate that something is now approved for the next environment, maybe. So. I mean, That's what I understood from what you said. I don't know if that's the real, if that's what they're really used for.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. I mean, I think that's a reasonable use case for those tags. I don't know if that's the use case that they envision specifically in Arbor when they introduce kind of labels or tags.
But it could be. I mean, you could
Could be.
be adding tags to an artifact to indicate that, let's say that you've tested it and you approve it. And then somebody could grab that and deploy it somewhere else.
Okay. So, I mean, in terms of implementation of these events, okay, so we start creating the issues and just trying to figure out what the next step or in practice how we can work on this. Is that something that you're interested in then bringing in or implementing or building a POC for Artifactory in the form of a plugin or something? Or what is the plan, and trying to figure out how we can best collaborate on this work?
So I'll need to check if this is something that's that I can get time for, or that somebody could get assigned to doing this. I'm not sure. I need to ask here.
If I may propose, maybe we could start by preparing a document for events related to registries or something like that. And we could include, of course, Harbor and Artifactory there and maybe others as well. And then collaborate on that document stating what kind of events we should have and what they should contain and how they should be maybe connected to other events we already have or something like that. Before we go on and create pull requests for actually adding these events to the protocol. So maybe that's easier to create a joint specification in that format rather from a registry use case perspective or something like that.
That's okay.
It might be easier to also discuss internally, both in JFrog and in other companies maybe or areas.
Yeah, it's also a valid approach because we have our very very specific view of how we see SDLC and how we implement it. And it would be a good idea to have somebody with another perspective.
Because if we go on and create like a pull request with event types already now, I think it's the risk is that we do it very Artifactory centric as you read into that comment. So I think it's better to collaborate on a general specification first and then create the events after that.
That's like an excellent proposal to me. Yeah. That said, if I think there is interest, we could start with the events that we already have. I mean, today we have artifact pooled event, and I was implementing a I've been implementing a POC for Harbor to support that. And I think if we have some use cases we want to showcase, that's a very powerful, if we can integrate one or more tools for these events and implement some, demonstrate some workflow or use case. I think it's really good to then show to people and to demonstrate what can be achieved through CDEvents.
Again, I
So to
just
make
don't have,
Sorry, Karen, go on.
I don't have approval for commitment for any developer or me to do this, but I'll take it to management.
I will just say,
Yeah, of course.
to propose a lightweight process around this, I guess we can just create an HackMD document just like this one and start collaborating there, and maybe also create a Slack channel with the relevant people invited to it. So we can discuss there, and then maybe also help out in implementing or documenting on HackMD for now. Or it could be a Google Docs if that's better for some reason. But if we have a dedicated Slack channel, we can also discuss it with everyone that is interested in the topic there.
Sounds good to me. All right. Yeah, we have yes, only 8 minutes left. So maybe just wanted to go quickly through the last few things on the agenda for today. And then if anyone has any other comments or questions they would like to bring up. Hopefully we have a few minutes left. I mentioned it earlier, but Ben prepared a PR about the connecting events. So again, anyone interested in that topic, I think any input will be really welcome. This is a really key piece of our specification. So the more voices we can have on this, the better. And in terms of collaboration, I wanted to mention that we had the initial meeting with Steve from the VSMI today. So we decided on a new monthly cadence for this meeting. So every month we'll meet and discuss on the progress of CDEvents and VSMI collaboration. So I put a link to the meeting notes from today. Steve already presented their progress on the VSMI topology and ontology, which I found was rather interesting. So they have a kind of architecture in mind about different type of events, from more like real-time events and more like data stored type of events. And they have CDEvents presented as part of the picture. They presented their ontology as well, and I'll ask Steve actually if he can share the slides so we can put the link in here. But I think a lot of the, or at least some of the ideas that they are discussing, they match similar discussion that we're having on CDEvent side. So I'm quite positive on the future of this collaboration. I don't know if Emil, you had anything to add on this topic.
No, I also am positive and think that we will have a good collaboration, and I think we have good meeting points where we can collaborate in a good way. It looks promising, I think.
The other thing I wanted to bring up is we had some time ago a meeting with the CNCF app delivery tag. So I think it went well, and they one of the items we discussed was the possibility of taking one of the software artifacts they produce, which is this potato head application, which is a kind of demo application that they use to demonstrate different app delivery strategies. And so the idea was to build a version of this potato head based on CDEvents to demonstrate how CDEvents can be used to produce software in this event-driven approach. So we are looking for contributors, candidates that would like to work on this, to drive this work or to contribute to it. So if you are interested or know someone who might be interested, please let us know so that we may have some progress on this. In the meanwhile, the CNCF app delivery tag, they learned about CDEvents and I think they were quite enthusiastic about the idea, and they will continue to promote the project and promote it across the different group in the CNCF. So that's the last update I got from them. So, and we have CDEvent visualization.
Yeah, I wanted to add a few points there. Like we demoed last in one of the CDEvents meets the two types of visualizations, right? Like one to use with the specific CDEvents tool, and other with generic CDEvents tool, like kind of Prometheus and Grafana. So we wanted to like just ask a follow-up discussion on this topic mainly to decide like which type of visualization that we wanted to use for this CDEvents visualization, and we can propose some reference architecture, and then we can work on the POC kind of thing on the decided one. We can have one follow-up discussion from the previous demonstration.
Yeah, and thanks again for the demo last time. My understanding is that there is a strong dependency between this and the connecting events topic. But I guess the two discussion probably can progress in parallel. I wonder if that's something maybe we need like a dedicated working group to discuss. I know Evans was interested in joining this discussion as well. Or should we just try to use this space maybe next week to dedicate some time to the visualization topic?
David here, Andrea. We'll keep Jalandra and ourselves will keep an eye on the connected events discussion. We might try and even decouple the visualization from that, so that you could parse whatever way the connected events happens and visualize anyway. So that's what we were thinking of doing. So we'll keep attending that connected events discussion, and yeah, maybe Jalandra, we do that. We present that reference architecture next week, a little bit on what the couple of options we have there. That works, Jalandra?
Yeah. We can use the next meeting.
Okay, so let's reserve some space then during the next meeting to dedicate on this. And yeah, thanks again for the demo and for your work on this. All right, almost time. Any last comment? All right, then thanks for joining, everyone, and nice to meet you, Carmet, and yeah, see you next time.
Thanks.
Thank you. See you. Bye.
Yeah. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Yep.